and wait for the recording to start. There we go. Okay. The recording for today's Transgender Equity Council Policy Subcommittee meeting has started. Does anyone have any edits to the agenda? I stuck the agenda in the calendar invite, but it's basically still right now just updates and discussion on the priority areas you all had identified. Is there anything else folks want to check in about?
I feel good about the agenda that we have.
This is Jay. I actually couldn't get access to the agenda. It wouldn't let me in the document.
Oh, darn. Okay, I'm gonna put a link to a different version of the agenda in the chat that should work for you. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Totally. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Does anyone have anything else to add while I'm link hunting?
Don't fudge.
If not, we can jump into updates starting with community safety. And so I'll share the updates I have around the 3 categories here, and we can talk through any potential next steps you all are interested in. The first thing I wanted to share is just, I know we had talked about the mental health crisis response team that the city is working on funding. And from my original sense of the timeline, there should be, like they should have at this point, received all the applications from the request for proposals for providers who can do that work and selected a provider, and the team should be getting going shortly. I'm going to follow up later this week with the Office of Performance and Innovation and confirm that that's the case, and confirm if there's like any role in the pilot that makes sense for you all to play. But basically the update I have right now is I think the pilot is actually about to get started. Are there any other questions that would be useful for me to ask them when I follow up about timing and potential roles for you all?
Can I help?
If not, I wanted to create a little bit of time if we wanted it to talk more about, while I'm reaching out to the Office of Performance and Innovation, the traffic safety work that they've also been staffed with leading. Councilmember Cunningham has started a staff direction for them to look into what it would look like to create an unarmed like traffic enforcement division within the city and essentially take a lot of that work out of MPD. I know we had a conversation last time about folks feeling like that was kind of the bare minimum in terms of what could be moved from MPD and what could be done in an unarmed way. And since I'm going to be reaching out to the Office of Performance and Innovation, I just wanted to check if there were any other questions you all wanted me asking or actions you wanted to take in any form around. If not, totally fine. But I know we hadn't really finished that conversation, so wanted to check back in.
Track, this is Billy. I was just wondering if there is like an outline for this new traffic safety department that is made public yet, or still in the works, or something that we could look at.
That is a great question. I will, when I send out the minutes, I'll link the staff direction that Councilmember Cunningham made, but his staff direction is essentially for them to work with other departments to outline what that division could look like. So like their project right now is literally creating what you're looking for to the most part. But I will link that staff direction in case it provides more detail that's useful beyond what I've summarized.
Okay, but nothing is public facing yet, like since there's no outline, I would assume.
No, the staff direction is the only public facing thing. This work has just started. They're supposed to present back to City Council either by the end of June or by the end of July. I should double check on the outline they've created, and anything that's presented to City Council will be public facing. Like both the presentation will be viewable on YouTube and all the documents will be public facing, and I can share those once they're out. But yeah, the process itself is happening internally right now, to my understanding. Does anyone have any other questions on that, or things that are useful for me to be getting more information for you all on?
I think having just a basic outline of what they're thinking. So yeah, just some sort of proposal to look at. Because right now we don't really have any information other than the fact that they're unarmed. So yeah, I'd love a baseline before we really kind of dig in. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what that would look like. But yeah, no other pressing questions from me at the moment.
Totally. My guess is we won't really have anything until they present to council in either June or July, but I will ask if there's anything that anything preliminary you all can look at, and I will pass it on if I get anything for sure. And the other update I wanted to give you all related to community safety was around the charter amendment. I know in the TEC recommendations to City Council in March, you all said that you supported a charter amendment to remove the requirement that the city has a police department and replace it with a Department of Public Safety. There are right now a couple proposed charter amendments that exist. They're still in the process of getting formalized. So a couple weeks ago, a few city council members presented a charter amendment. I believe Councilmember Cunningham, Councilmember Fletcher, and Councilmember Schrader, that would do this and would create a division of law enforcement within this Department of Public Safety. I can link the documents in their longer presentation. They also committed to a community engagement process that would allow community members to flesh out like the actual shape of this ordinance that would create this department. That in the last few days, the city has also started moving forward the community proposal that would similarly create this department, but doesn't explicitly require a division of law enforcement. And there has not been a super clear answer from the council members on, okay, if this community proposal is on the ballot, will they withdraw their proposal so that there's not two competing amendments on the ballot? I will keep you all updated as that conversation continues. Since the community amendment hasn't technically made it through city council yet, they wouldn't be at the point where they would need to do that. But so the update I have is basically just there are a lot of charter amendments about reshaping and or removing the police department that are on their way through the city council process right now to make it onto the ballot. I do not have an update on whether the council members are removing their amendment to just let the community amendment go forward. There's also an amendment from the Charter Commission that would restructure the city government to give the mayor more control and the city council less control over some of the things that are currently split differently. And so that's about to go through city council to be on the ballot as well. That was maybe too vague because it was in a high level overview. And I will keep you all posted as we know exactly what's going to be on the ballot, but curious if anyone has any questions, reflections, thoughts, or if it's useful for me to go into more detail about any of those pieces.
Hey, Jack, this is Emma. Can you just kind of outline what the next steps would be for that? So if it gets on the ballot, then it would go into the general election, and then what happens? Like how does it just pass like by a majority vote, or and then what's the next step after that?
Yeah, totally. So my understanding is things right now are going through city council to then go through the charter commission. They are getting to the charter commission in enough time that they would be able to go onto the ballot. They would then go onto the ballot, be voted on in the general election. If they passed, I do believe it's just a simple majority vote. So whichever one passes the city would then be in charge of figuring out how to implement, which is where like that council member community engagement process around like what should the actual details of this ordinance and department be would be one of the things that would contribute to implementation. I don't have a super clear answer on what happens if two amendments whose like requirements are somewhat mutually exclusive, like either of the Department of Public Safety amendments and the restructuring to give the mayor more power amendment both passed, because those amendments explicitly disagree in terms of whether the mayor or city council has authority over certain things. I don't have a super clear answer on what would happen if both of those got majority vote. And at some point I will get that answer from the city clerk's office and can let you all know when I know. But yes, it would be majority vote, and then the city would have to actually sit down and figure out how to implement it essentially.
And if, just one more thing, if the charter amendment to give the mayor more control passed, then I assume it would mean that getting charter amendments to basically dissolve the police department, that would be much harder, or if not impossible in the future, from a city council perspective.
So currently the mayor is the sole authority on the police department. All other departments report to like both city council and the mayor, except for MPD, which only reports to the mayor. The like government restructuring amendment, as it's called, would move more things to report directly to the mayor. This is not a legal perspective, so I could be wrong, but from my understanding, if that passed this year, in a future year's election, a different charter amendment could be proposed, which would strike that language, move things back to being more collectively controlled, and do something like creating a Department of Public Safety that is accountable to both the city council and the mayor, the way this charter amendment is. But yes, if that one passed and not another one, it would take another charter amendment undoing it before the city council could have more direct authority over the police again. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I guess I'm just trying to figure out like how is this like kind of the battle to end all battles, or you know, just how serious it is.
Yeah, I think the big question that I'm still looking for an answer to is what happens if both amendments pass?
Right.
And how much of a, yeah, like where does that go? But yes, the city council cannot do much with the police department, both under the current structure and under a structure where the mayor had authority over even more, to my understanding.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Totally. Does anyone else have questions around the charter amendment, or anything else they want to share there? If not, I will jump into housing, if that's all right.
Sure.
I don't-
So far, I didn't know anything about what you were saying, so this is good. Keep going. I'm getting well
Great.
educated today.
If
I had no idea that the mayor only controls the police department.
things where it's useful for me to give more detail, please let me know. Minneapolis has a fascinating city structure.
Yeah, it sure does.
And for folks who are following along in the SharePoint agenda doc right now, I will actually turn this into a minutes doc. I can't take minutes successfully when I'm sharing things, but I know the things I'm sharing and they will end up in here with notes in more detail. And for now, you're just watching me take notes to myself of next steps on here, and apologies for that. But in terms of housing, the only update I have around the recommendations you all made is that the rent stabilization amendment, which is another thing, another charter amendment that would be on the ballot this fall, just to add to the list of charter amendments, is in the process of moving through the Charter Commission so that it can get to the ballot. It has also gotten to the Charter Commission with enough time that they can't just delay it to prevent it from being on the ballot. So they did not post minutes from their meeting, so I wasn't able to see anything other than that they have looked at the rent stabilization amendment, but I can let you know that that's at that point moving through the process. And if I hear things on that, I will keep you posted. I don't have updates on any of the other housing related things that we all have discussed, but I'm curious if anyone has questions or things they wanted to share there. If not, I can updates around the sex work decriminalization work. Kenzie and I were both at the last Decrim Coalition meeting. And essentially, they are continuing to move forward with trying to get the loitering ordinance, which, and I will finish the sentence, then I'll give quick context on it for folks who've missed these updates in the past, but trying to get the loitering ordinance repealed this like late summer or early fall. The loitering ordinance makes it illegal for anyone to loiter with what the police perceive as, quote, like intent to sell narcotics or intent to commit prostitution, I believe is the language. So solely around like perceived intent, someone standing in a public space. And as we get closer, and there is more of a work of and the coalition is focusing more on like actually connecting with council members and has like proposed dates around legislation. I will keep you all posted on all of that because that feels like the clearest place for the TEC to fit in, specifically in your TEC role. And whether you all want to write a letter in support or reach out individually to council members or meet with them or anything else. Other than that, I've continued to send out and will send out in the minutes from this as well, information about, or not in the minutes, but in a follow-up email from this as well, just information about upcoming events they're having that are just kind of like spread the word at public education around the loitering ordinance and what it is. And I will continue to share those as I have that information. Kenzie, are there other things that you think are important for folks to know that I'm missing since you were in the last meeting? And if you can't think of anything, that's fine. Sorry to put you on the spot.
What I am gonna say isn't super pertinent to understanding the ordinance. However, there was a very interesting point brought up at the Decrim meeting that points out the like relationship between like loitering and corporations in downtown, which I find, again, that's not necessary to understand the ordinance, but it just gives you a better understanding of, I don't know, how everything is tied into itself. And I think Target was mentioned specifically. Unfortunately, I did not save the article that somebody sent in the chat, but yeah, Target has like a big hand in keeping the loitering like ordinance afloat. So I don't know, just interesting things to think about while we consider moving forward.
Does anyone have any questions on any of that? If not, the last thing I had was just that unfortunately we don't have any more updates around banning the transpanic defense because the proposed legislation did not make it in on a state level. And so that's not moving forward this year, but is a thing that you all can get the city to again try to lobby for at the state level next year. But that, because we can't do it on a city level, that is about what we've got on. While we're all here and have a little bit of time, I did want to pose a question just around, I think in past years, we've scrambled a little bit to prepare end of year recommendations. Last year, clearly I did not get that process moving in time because our end of year recommendations came in March, which is the next year. And so I would propose maybe starting even at the next policy meeting, starting to kind of look at the recommendations you all made last year, and try to start thinking about where and how you want to make recommendations, and get them heard by council members this year so that they can maybe be presented even like earlier in the fall before the budget process really gets going and influence the budget process more. I'm curious how that feels. And then I'm curious, other than like me trying to pull together, like, here's your past recommendations and here's some things we know are coming up, if there's other things that would be useful for starting that conversation.
Can we find past recommendation on limbs?
Past TEC recommendations should be on limbs. Although the limbs search function has been improved, I still find that it doesn't always pull up what I want. But like trying to search Transgender Equity Council should get you there. The past TEC recommendations are also on the TEC SharePoint, I believe, but I know the TEC SharePoint is sometimes a bit of a mess and maybe not organized in a way that's super intuitive. So I'm also happy to send things back out, but yes, they should be in both of those places.
Sure. I never want to create more work for you, Track. So if I can find the past recommendations, I'd love to look those over. I think it makes a lot of sense to, yeah, just keep in mind that we don't want to scramble with this year's recommendations. So yeah, I'll keep that in the back of my mind.
One of the things I was going to mention, this isn't necessarily super helpful in the moment, but maybe help brainstorm how we could get this sort of information. I really wish we had, a way to pay like a researcher to actually look at, municipal like policies and other stuff around trans and gender nonconforming folks, like nationwide, so that we could pull from that sort of report. And it could be that a report like this already exists and I'm just not aware of it. But maybe if that's the case, we can look to see if there's any sort of report on trans inclusive policies at the municipal level nationwide. And then we can go from there to see if there's anything in there we want to pull out of it. Because I feel like so much of the policy game is someone has a really good idea and it's, someone in New Hampshire had this really great idea to do this, such and such thing. Oh, we should do that here. And then kind of cribbing from it and then pushing locally.
Galen, I really appreciate that. I don't know if something exists. I can do a little bit of digging just to see if I can find something, although I doubt it because I feel like I might have found it by this point if it did. But I am, both through the Government Alliance on Race and Equity and through a like very informal network of folks with LGBTQ equity roles in government around the nation, like in contact with folks where I could even just put out a call for like, has anyone passed anything that they think is great and can we see what it is? And it would definitely not reach municipalities that have passed stuff but don't have like someone officially in a role like that, but would start to get us some ideas anyway. So I can see if I can get anything, and we'll send along what I can find.
That would be really rad. And then also perhaps failing, any sort of comprehensive study being done, one of the things that we can try and recommend is that we do that sort of, that's a recommendation, that we like actually set aside time and maybe a little bit of money to put towards researching trans inclusion policies in other cities for us to review as a city, right? Because if it's not happening, it seems certainly like a thing that could happen if we had the time and resources to get it done. So.
Totally. I will flag that for the kind of like potential recommendation list.
Yeah, I think it's a good source for finding recommendations in the first place. But then if we find out that we can't find something like that and there are no good resources, well, then I guess the recommendation is make the resource. Why not?
Do other folks have things that would be useful in order to start doing some of this brainstorming?
This is Billy, can I ask what was because I was not here last year, what was the rush in last year? Was it not having, like, can you explain that so we can be better this year? Like, was it not having enough recommendations? Was it too many recommendations? Was it,
Yeah, great question. I can do my best, and anyone else who was here, feel free to jump in. But I would say it was partially just literally on me being like, oh, I forgot that you have to schedule getting it in front of council like a month and a half in advance to actually fit yourself on the agenda. And so dates kept getting shifted, and yeah, just not leaving enough time. Folks didn't have a ton of capacity to do document drafting. Casey played a really big role in that, but many folks, for a lot of good reasons, did not. And so like, yeah, just not giving ourselves enough time to try to pull the document together, and therefore folks not having time to really look at it. And I think struggling with the balance between like shoot for the moon and list everything we want in priority order so we at least get some things, and list few enough recommendations that maybe people are more likely to take them on, and leaned more towards like shoot for the moon, here's everything. And I'm still not sure what's the best answer, and like you all can work together to decide this year what makes the most sense. But I think that was the other struggle, was figuring out how to cull it down, and like, should there have been more pre-work, particularly with CVP Jenkins and Councilmember Cunningham, to get their feedback on it and have them shape it before it even moved forward, for example?
okay, yeah, that's what I figured. So I think maybe, and the folks who were here last year, maybe come up with like a number and see if it could be like more palatable this year, and like have kind of like a goal around that, as far as like drafting recommendations and getting all of that. If shooting for the moon did not work last year, if we want to, I don't know, continue that this year, kind of cull it down a little bit earlier to give us more time then, to make more of a cohesive document.
Yeah, and I will say that like there are still a lot of pieces of it moving forward, and it's a little unclear like what did or didn't work. Like, you all made many of the past few years, the list of recommendations has been long. This year, I think we had more intention around like getting them sent individually to each council office and following up with each council office and following up with the staff involved, and kind of being like, okay, we told council that this office should do it. And if council doesn't turn around and tell the office to do it, that doesn't mean that I can't reach out to that office and be like, hey, the TEC recommended this. Would you be interested in moving forward on it? And so in some ways this year has been the most effective because there was more kind of reach out from every angle. But I think we could do that better and earlier this year and set up more of you to reach out to your council members and things like that as well. If no one else has other questions or needs on that front, I will just say, like, this is probably going to involve me sending you like a few somewhat longer documents to read, more so than I generally try to send. So if you have questions about things and want to go through documents together one-on-one, or there's like a way I can support you in finding time to do it and making sense of them, please let me know. I don't want to just throw documents at you, and I'm happy to support however possible, but want to make sure that you all are able to like review the relevant things so that future policy meetings, you kind of have the context and can brainstorm based on past recommendations. So please reach out so that I can offer support in whatever way. And Jay and Nadia are like TEC friends. Please still, like, we want you as much a part of this as you want to be. I want to make it clear that like attending meetings and drafting recommendations are both things that non-official members are welcome to be a part of, as much as obviously you want to and are able to. Does anyone have any other questions or things they wanted to check in about?
Track, can I ask, this is Emma, can I just ask what happened with the trans-panic defense and why that wasn't like pushed forward? What the decision-making process was around that, or like if it was a budget issue, or like just kind of what the issue was with that?
Totally. I am less versed in the state legislative process than city, so I don't know if I'm going to use all the best words to explain this. But from what I heard from our intergovernmental relations director, who's the one tracking state level bills, like the bill was proposed, but it just was not picked up, did not get a hearing, and was not put into like the omnibus bill or anything that gets voted on at the end of the legislative session. So it's just state legislators choosing not to move the thing forward. But if folks either are able to explain that more clearly or know more detail, please jump in. Galen, I saw you maybe joining.
So it's actually, my understanding is it's the same thing that happened to the more transphobic bill that did not go through recently in, was it Alabama or Arkansas? One of the two. The A states? What are A states? I don't know what they are. But basically it just didn't get assigned a hearing. It didn't get taken up. There wasn't enough time on the schedule. Not enough time on the schedule. So it wasn't prioritized and it just got left. So it's effectively dead. They can reintroduce it next year if they want to pursue it. But yeah, otherwise it just kind of like dies and no one touched it.
Okay. Thanks.
Totally.
It's kind of a bummer, but it's also a thing that you know, a lot of people will like prioritize which bills get actually slated on the schedule to be heard in committee, in part based on what they expect the outcome to be. And so sometimes they will not prioritize a thing that they know will not pass in order to prioritize something that they think they might be able to get done. But it's all, you know, a game of how much time the legislative session lasts and what else is on the agenda.
Thank you for your state policy experience.
I can see that. Plus, this isn't something that even
I
if
hung
you
out
oppose
with
it,
too many people who are state. Sorry, I was saying I hung out with too many state lobbyists in Colorado, so apologies.
this is a wonderful thing. But I was going to say, this is unfortunately it's one of those things that even if you opposed it, you wouldn't get any type of political clout or capital out of it. So it's not valuable to people enough to say yay or nay. So this is truly the matter of it's so benign in some cases, it's not even to be bothered with.
Yeah, I mean, it is for sure a huge disappointment that they didn't decide that it was a priority to ban the trans panic defense, right? That's always a bummer when there's an opportunity there, and then they don't take it. But like this sort of bill in Colorado did the same thing for multiple years. And then, you know, it oftentimes happens where it will be created like 3-4 years in a row, and then it'll finally get heard when they feel like they can actually push it through. Otherwise, they're basically just saying, I introduced this because I believe in it, and then it gets kind of set aside, which is a bummer, but it happens.
Yeah, thank you for that context. Does anyone else have any other questions or things they wanted to check in about? Oh, seeing the question in the chat about the date of the summit, it is October 3rd and 4th. And we are getting save the dates made through our communications department right now, and we'll send those out as soon as we have them.
Cool. This is Jay. And then another thing, sorry, I'm like looking at my notes. So it's October 3rd and 4th. Is that a full day event?
It's going to be an afternoon session and an evening session both days. It won't be full day. Yeah.
Okay. I will probably be sending you and May an email about the update for what we've been planning with Amir for this storytelling into policy project or workshop. But I feel like I might have more questions. Nadia, do you have any questions? Like calling you out on the spot.
No, it's okay. I was just, October 3rd through the 4th evening session. Do you have like how many hours it's going to be?
Totally. Right now we're thinking 3 to 5 p.m. and 7 to 9 p.m. each day. But if anyone has a like reason that's a particularly bad scheduling plan, please say, because it is early enough that we can still shift that.
No, I think it's fine. I was just wondering how long it was going to be just for timing purposes.
Totally.
Seven to 9 p.m. on a Monday.
Yeah, we have moved doing more like outside of the workday times so that it accommodates both like folks' work schedules and youth who are in school. But I also know that it also makes it difficult for people who don't want to put in evening hours. We've never been able to figure out a really good, perfect way to work for everyone's schedules.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything else? If not, we can wrap up a little bit early. And thank you, Jay, for sending on that email about the workshop, and excited to see it and figure out next steps once you all are ready.
I have a quick question. What does the city look like in terms of, you know, the pandemic and in-person meetings? So kind of what I'm getting at, will we be meeting in person in the foreseeable future? Anything like that?
Great question. Thank you for that. I have not gotten a final call on what that looks like for appointed boards. I know that employees are supposed to be back to our like new normal is what they're saying by Labor Day. So that won't necessarily mean in the office 5 days a week, but that'll mean like whatever our like ongoing new plan is, we will be at that by Labor Day, I believe. And if someone knows more, please jump in, that by sometime, I don't remember exactly when, in 2021, City Council will be back to meeting primarily in person. My guess is, and that's essentially going to be whenever, I think I'm getting more updates on this on Wednesday, in the meeting for all of the staff of appointed boards. So I will update you all on the details of that after that. Essentially, whenever the state of Minnesota changes their open meeting law to no longer allow virtual meetings as a form of open meetings, both city council and appointed boards like you all will have to go back to in person unless we can lobby for any sort of edit that like allows both in-person and virtual options for accessibility. I don't know how high the chances of that are, but that has been the city's stated goal from what I've heard. So I don't have a date, but my guess is sometime this year, you all will be required to go back to in-person, and I'm gonna keep you updated as soon as I get more information on what that actually looks like, which will probably be Wednesday.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Totally. And hopefully this goes without saying, but obviously, particularly at any point that there's a requirement to go back to in person, like I am happy to work with you all to figure out how to make it feel as safe, as accessible, as COVID safe for you all as possible in terms of the size and type of space or wherever that we meet. And happy to talk one-on-one or in groups about any of that. Thank you for asking that question, Kenzie.
Speaking of meeting in person, plug for the TEC social tomorrow. See you all there. I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yes.
Yes, I got snackies still.
Yay. Thank you for the food, Melissa. Jay and Nadia, I'm realizing I don't actually think I sent that to you, but I can forward it on if you want to come hang out in person with all the folks you've only gotten to meet on Teams.
Yes, please send an invite.
Please.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, if nobody has anything else, I will stop the recording and thank you all.